Hi, everyone. My name is Suzanne Hume, and I'm the Educational Director and founder of cleanersforkids.org. Today, we have our fabulous youth board and interns and our special guest, Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali, with us here. I'd like to introduce Leanna Cortez on our youth board to talk with us a bit about rollbacks and have a great conversation with Dr. Ali. Leanna.
Thank you, Suzanne. I just wanted to quickly introduce Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali, former EPA, Hip Hop Caucus, and just environmental justice activist and superpower. Thank you for joining us today. Would you like to just introduce yourself and a little bit about what you do?
Oh, sure. Well, first, it's wonderful and an honor to be here with everybody. I'm Mustafa Santiago Ali. I've been working on justice issues since I was 16 and been working on environmental justice issues just a little bit after that. And I've just been blessed to be, raised and mentored by many of the folks in the civil rights movement and the environmental justice movement. And so be by so many learning and growing. And I'm just blessed that they allow me to be in their space.
Okay, I think you cut out just a little bit, but I just wanted to thank you again for joining us tonight. A lot of what we talk about is what you are really passionate about and things that you've been working on. So it's a wonderful opportunity to have you here tonight, and so that the audience can get to know you a little bit better and what you do. So a lot of what we talk about during our panel discussions are these 100 rollbacks. So a lot of what we talk about during these discussions are these 100 rollbacks or undoings of protections that are currently happening under the Trump administration. We learned about these 100 rollbacks when we found the New York Times article that was discussing why these rollbacks are really important for the public to know about and to learn about. And one of the resources they used were these rollback trackers from Harvard and Columbia Law. So these rollback trackers you can find on our website, cleanforkids.org, and they tell you which rollbacks have been completed, which ones are in progress, and it gives you a little bit of background on each rollback and why it's really important that we advocate for them and we make sure that they aren't rollbacked, as a lot of them are really crucial to environmental health, human health, and all those wonderful things. So I'm going to briefly talk about rollback number 1, which if you've been to previous panel discussions, you might have seen me discuss. So rollback number 1 is the weakened greenhouse gas standards for passenger cars and light trucks. So this rollback, it released this rule called the Safer, Affordable, Fuel Efficient, or SAFE Vehicles Rule for model years 2021 to 2026 cars. And so basically, there was this rule prior to this SAFE rule that required transportation departments, sorry, my little brother, and planners to track tailpipe emission changes. And they needed to set reduction targets for emissions, create reports about this. They basically had to get a lot of data in regards to how much emission or like greenhouse gases are coming from vehicles, specifically cars, and they needed to make targets to reducing that and create reports. However, under this new SAFE vehicles rule, they don't have to do that anymore. State transportation departments don't have to do any of those reduction targets, make those reports or anything, which is extremely dangerous because this means that a lot more greenhouse gases can come out and there's no standard set or there's no target set for reducing it. So that means it's dangerous for our for our health because it increases air pollution and it contributes to the greenhouse gas effect, which we have also previously mentioned in a panel discussion before. But to keep it short and simple is basically when we have all these different types of gases like CO2 in the atmosphere, and when heat and sunlight comes in, it gets trapped and it contributes to the warming of our planet. So this rollback is detrimental not only to the planet of the health of humans because of air pollution, but also the health of our planet. So Dr. Staffa, would you like to discuss why rollback number 1 is so detrimental and talk a little bit more about it?
Yeah, it's detrimental in a number of ways. One, because of the public health impacts that putting additional pollution into communities, and it causes chronic medical conditions. You'll find that because of this air pollution, PM 2.5 and other types of air pollution that is coming out of the tailpipes, causes liver and kidney disease, causes lung diseases. And we know that those lung diseases also make us more vulnerable to COVID-19, both in infections and in loss of life. And then it also, unfortunately, plays a significant role in the warming up of our planet and our oceans, and causing climate change to be much more intense. The wildfires, the hurricanes, the floods, these very serious rain events that we also see that are very damaging as well. So all of this plays, into the strategy of us focusing on minimizing these impacts so that we protect people's health and we protect our planet.
Thank you. It's really important that you mentioned the public health aspect of it, as well as how it impacts our planet, not only just because it affects like the warming of our planet, but also the oceans. That's a big thing that a lot of people forget. Kind of relates to this term like ocean acidification, which is really harmful, not only for the health of our oceans, but all of the animals in it, all the fish in it. And so I'm really glad that you brought that up. So the next rollback I'm going to be talking about is rollback number 2, which this rollback revoked California's power to set stricter tailpipe emission standards than the federal government. So for a little background, before the Clean Air Act was kind of set in stone, California had their own really strict tailpipe emission standards for themselves because California is so heavily populated, and they understood that they needed to lower their emissions if they wanted to reduce air pollution, smog, all that stuff. So when the Clean Air Act was made, the EPA granted California this kind of waiver, so that way they didn't have to follow federal government standards. They could continue going on with their own, and any states that wanted to follow the standard could. And so that was really important because these were already lower than the federal government standards. So a lot of other states were, lessening their contribution to, climate change and stuff in terms of certain emissions by setting these standards. However, recently, the EPA and the Trump administration took final action to revoke this authority and this waiver. And they are now making the states that also follow California's tailpipe emissions, as well as California, they're making them follow federal government standards, which are increasingly worse for the planet and are not as strict. And so we have more emissions and all that stuff. So obviously this is, not obviously, but this is something that is pretty dangerous, and it's kind of going in the wrong direction that we want to go to in terms of air pollution. So I would love to hear your take on it, Dr. Mustafa, and just a little bit more information about it and what you think.
Well, I think, one, that you did a fantastic job in explaining what it was. The other side of this is that the federal government is supposed to lead. They are supposed to really be thinking about, in totality, how do we help our country to be stronger and more protected? And when they don't do that, then you have, fantastic states that are standing up and saying, well, if you won't lead, we will. And in our leadership, we understand that, we may have additional burdens, additional challenges from the pollution that's going on. We all know in California, there's a lot of cars out there, and plenty of people have sat in traffic for hours upon hours upon hours. So in understanding and knowing those dynamics, it just makes sense for states like California to say, we need to have stronger, sort of standards in place to protect our citizens, but also we want to also help lead on addressing these impacts that are happening from climate change So we get a twofer. One, we get to help to protect our citizens and our state, and we get a chance to help protect the planet for everyone.
Yeah, that was a great point you brought up, and how like it also is kind of revoking the sense of leadership that they've taken in terms of environmental like standards and issues. I know California's a powerhouse when it comes to that. So also just to mention, California is suing because of this, and as well as all the other states that were going underneath their standards. So we hope that they can get this waiver back, and we hope for the best. And sadly, there's no more time for public comments. This is completely, it's been rolled back, but it's important to, keep this stuff in mind and make sure that we don't make the same mistake in the future. And just also, like Dr. Mustafa said, remember these dynamics and remember about like leadership roles and how we can kind of apply that to environmental things. So now I just wanted to kind of briefly discuss with you about divestment, since that is the topic for our panel discussion tonight. For those of you in the audience who don't know, divestment means to kind of take money out of fossil fuels. So a lot of companies, some universities, big corporations, they put money or these stocks and bonds and a bunch of different investments into fossil fuel companies. And this allows fossil fuel companies to keep, fracking, to keep mining, to keep doing all this horrendous stuff that harms our environment. So when we divest, we take money away from these fossil fuel companies, and we can, and preferably we want to put that money into renewable energy sources. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about like how you feel about divestment and all that good stuff.
Well, divestments are super critical. Lots of times you can't get folks necessarily do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. But when you start messing with their pocketbooks, when you start actually taking money away, then you'll get people's attention, and hopefully that will then motivate them to do the right thing. And divestment has worked in the past. And of course, young people played a huge role in it. If you look at the civil rights movement, something that was going on before many of us were around, folks were doing some divestment types of activities in the sense of with the buses, not supporting the buses and not supporting, some of the other infrastructure that was in place that didn't allow African Americans to be able to, sit at lunch counters or ride the bus or so forth or so on. Then you fast forward a little bit. And in South Africa, the divestments are what actually changed, the apartheid system that was going on in South Africa, along with all of the activism and advocacy that people were putting in place. But it was really when folks started to zero in on those companies and to say, you have to take your money, your resources out of this, or we're no longer going to buy your products. We're no longer going to support you. Then you fast forward to the incredible work that is happening in the divestment space. And of course, it started off by students saying that our schools need to divest from these impacts, because it's our lives that we're going to have to deal with this, for the next 50, 60, 70 years, whatever it might be. So it is that student movement that really got divestment going. And now we see, trillions of dollars that are being divested. You are now seeing companies, that were staunchly against, climate change, who are now saying, well, you know what, climate change is real. And we're willing to actually do some things. So I take divestment one step further. I say I'm moving from divestment to reinvestment, because what we do with those dollars is so incredibly important. And I'll just leave one last point with you. The blessing of working at the Hip Hop Caucus when I was there is that they had a Divest, Invest campaign. And there were a number of artists and entertainers who were a part of that, utilizing their platforms that help share with folks how incredibly important it is, but also how each and every one of us has power to actually, help to make change happen. And this is one of the ways. So I'm so glad that we're talking about divestment and reinvestment, especially for our most vulnerable communities.
Yes, that is so important. I love that idea of divestment and reinvestment. I think that's a really important idea and it is important to take it a step further, because divestment does send a clear message, especially when you're dealing with people's money. And that's a really good way. I mean, speak their language, right? So I think that's a great message. And you mentioned how it impacts these certain communities. Would you mind talking about like, environmental justice overall and perhaps how it's even more prevalent during COVID-19?
Sure. So, environmental injustice is those disproportionate impacts that happen in communities of color and lower wealth white communities and on indigenous land. And we find that, many of those communities are the sacrifice zones, if you will. They're the places we put everything nobody else wants. The fossil fuel facilities, the petrochemical corporations, the waste transfer stations, the dumps, and low-income housing as well that often has its own set of challenges. And because people are living in these conditions with these toxic loading of lots of different polluting facilities and other things, that they get chronic medical conditions, right? And because of those chronic medical conditions, and it could be anything, we should just call out the fact that we've got 100,000 people in our country who die each year prematurely from air pollution. That's more people are dying from air pollution than are dying from gun violence. And gun violence is super, super important for us to focus on that. It's more people dying from air pollution than are dying from car crashes. And we know we have to focus on that as well. And we know we got 24 million people in our country who have asthma, 7 million kids. And disproportionately it is African American and Latinx folks who are the ones who are going to the emergency rooms and the ones who are losing their lives. And now we overlay it with COVID-19, which feeds on chronic medical conditions. And actually, when you live in these communities, you're more likely to get infected. And unfortunately, you're also, more likely to lose your life because of those chronic medical conditions. And, that is the work in the environmental justice space, because it is about the environment and it's also about public health. And it's also about climate change. Because these communities, when you see this pollution, like in the picture that's in front of us, as the planet warms up, air pollution becomes even more deadly. Smog and ozone and all these various types of things, put these extra burdens on communities who are often uninsured or underinsured. These are communities that often, because of what you see around their communities, there's this disinvestment. So their homes may have lost value. So folks can't just move away. They have to deal with the situations that are going on. And that's why we have to take a holistic approach to addressing these issues. And that's why I'm so blessed to be here this evening with all these incredible young thinkers who are saying, we've got some ideas about how to make change happen. We've got some innovation that we can put into the mix, and we can help protect folks.
Thank you so much. It's really important to highlight, environmental injustices as it's a social justice issue. It's a human rights issue. And I think you brought up a really good point when you're talking about not only is their health impacted, but, how about their houses? They can't just go up and move away from these houses. Most of the time they don't have the means to do so. And I think that's just really important. And it's really important to take that holistic approach, because I think we often kind of get caught up in, all the science, but we forget about the people as well. So thank you for that. And thank you for everything you do. It means a lot. This is our second time having you on. And honestly, I learn something new every time, and I get more ideas on how I can communicate about environmental injustices as well. And you're just honestly an inspiration to me, and I'm sure my other youth board members and interns. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Y'all keep doing incredible work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. We have a lot to learn from the videos that you do. There's so many videos that you put on Twitter, and we also want to put videos on Twitter and on other social media to make sure that community members and everyone has access to important information. So we're excited about finding out if you'll be available to work with us, to give us a lot of tips and ideas about that, and then also, join us. We just had so much to learn from you. So thank you so much for your work at the EPA for 24 years, fighting for our health, fighting for us, and all that you do. We appreciate that from the bottom of our hearts. and just reaching out to us. I mean, we're a smaller nonprofit, although we're super excited to have, interns. We're getting them from all over the United States, which is fabulous. And lots of high school people and elementary people are writing fun stories about protecting animals. And we have a lot of contests that Janice is going to talk about here in a little bit. But yes, so all ideas and suggestions, I mean, just bring them on, and we're just so excited. We have Darren and Gabby, who aren't on here tonight, but that you've met before, that are editing videos. And, we welcome new interns and others who have these talents who would like to join us to help get the word out. But we have so much to learn from you. So, we're so happy that you're here, and you always, hop on at any time, because we're just really grateful to have you here. So thank you again so much. So what else would you like to share? What else would you like to say before Janice shares about the contest?
Well, I think, one of the most important things, all this really hard but doable work that we focus on is all wrapped up in our vote, right? And even when we're not 18 yet, you still have power, right? So you can work with your friends who are 18, or relatives, or your parents, to just have conversations about, one, what do you want 21st century America to look like, right? Because that is your time frame. And what are your dreams? What are your aspirations? What are your expectations? As someone who is right there on the cusp of being able to vote sometime in the not so distant future. So you have power in that space. And all the young people that I work with across the country, I'm always trying to remind them that, you might not be 18 yet, but your voice matters, and that your intellect matters, and your ideas matter, and you should be sharing those with folks. And that's why I'm so blessed to hear the work that you're going to be doing in the multimedia space. And I've seen so many light bulbs come on when folks start doing poetry or rap or singing, or all the other forms of art that's out there. And then also when people realize, wait a minute, I actually do have power. And I want to figure out ways to translate that into real change and real resources also. So I'm excited to see what you guys do.
Yes, I'm so excited too. Janice, are you ready to show some of the contests and things that we're working on?
So hi everyone, my name is Janice and I'm on Team 4, #WaterIsLife, #ProtectWater. And if you are a student watching this, you can earn community service by writing 2 pages of notes and a short summary of what you learned. More information can be found on cleanerforkids.org. You can enter our contest at cleanerforkids.org as well, where you can help protect wildlife, public lands, clean air, clean water, and overall make a difference. If you go to our contest page at cleanerforkids.org, you will see a variety of contests like art, music, writing, poetry, dance, STEM projects, infographics, presentations, and more. We have many K-12 contests and challenges for everyone to take part in. If you like to write poetry, we have a contest for you. You can write poems about our air, water, land, health, animals, and forests. We also have a contest called These Are the Hands that recognizes and honors people who are working to make life better for others. You can draw and decorate a picture of a hand with symbols, words, and pictures of what this person has done. You can also write about a person who honors social and racial justice. Some champions are Martin Luther King Jr. or John Lewis. Or you can do environmental justice heroes that have protected our air, water, and public lands. Another contest we have is called Protect What You Love. This is a contest where you can do art, video clips, or write about your favorite animal or place and why we should protect it. Your art, infographics, video clips, stories, essays, and projects all help bring awareness to why we need to protect nature, clean water, clean air, oceans, rivers, streams, wildlife, forests, parks, our food, and our health. You can also sign petitions, so go to cleanerforkids.org to check out the many petitions you can take part in to help make a difference. At Cleaner for Kids, we have 6 teams, and social and environmental justice are a part of what we do. I am on Team 4, hashtag Water is Life, and Team 4 works to protect drinking water, oceans, rivers, and streams. Also, I am on Team 2, and we plant trees, protect forests, and wildlife. We protect what we love. I love sea turtles. The Pacific loggerhead turtles have been protected federally since 1970, but with the Trump administration's rollbacks or cuts of protections, they are allowing fishing gear where turtles and other sea animals are, and they get tangled and caught in fishing nets. Sea turtles have been declining because of that, California has stepped into action to protect the Pacific loggerhead turtles. These turtles are quite remarkable. They have a soft shell, can weigh up to 2,000 pounds, and swim more than 10,000 miles. They are the deepest diving turtles. I'd like to thank all of you who are working hard to protect living creatures, our water, our air, and public lands. It means so much. Thank you to Earth Justice, NRDC, the Sierra Club, the Center of Biological Diversity, Oceana, Surfrider, NCCCA, and our friend Caitlin McCoy, staff attorney at Harvard Law, and Hillary D. at Columbia Law, who document and provide information. And thank you to the New York Times, Yale, and others for being an important and reliable source of information. The Clean Water Act, the Clean Water Rule, and the Streams Act protect our water. Unfortunately, during the Trump administration, there has been 100 environmental cuts or rollbacks of our protections, many of which include rollbacks of protections for our water. Now, I would like to introduce Catherine.
Hi everyone, I'm Catherine. I am part of Team 2, which involves protecting wildlife, plants, gardens, planting trees and gardens, as well as protecting forests. Our endangered species are at risk because of rollbacks or cuts of protection. So many animals have been saved by the Endangered Species Act and by organizations fighting for them like Earth Justice and Sierra Club. Last week, I talked about the bald eagle, how the bald eagle was saved by the Endangered Species Act. We have one more day to sign an important petition to help save the Endangered Species Act. The petition is on our website at Clean Earth for Kids. The Center for Biological Delivery released something this week on the Humboldt martins. The Humboldt martin will receive protection as a threatened species under the Endangered Species Act. This decision came after 2 conservation groups sued the Trump administration for its long wait in trying to make protections official. Once common in coastal forests in Northern California and Southern Oregon, were almost wiped out by habitat loss and fragmentation due to logging. Today, fewer than 400 of these species exist, but because of the work of many conservation groups, we were able to get the Humboldt martin on the ESA. Although the ESA is being attacked by the Trump administration, we can still remind ourselves of the victories that the ESA has reached. The bald eagle was taken off the endangered species list in 2007. Threats to the bald eagle are hunting, habitat destruction, shootings by hunters, and pesticide DDT. But eagles recovered from as low as 417 no nesting pairs in 1963, and now more than 100,000 species of bald eagles in the entire US. Big thanks to the protections of the ESA and work from individuals aiming to end the extinction of these astonishing birds. Lastly, the sea otter. Sea otters play an important role in keeping their kelp forests in balance, as they are a keystone species. Thankfully, they have been protected by the ESA since 1977. Threats include polluted runoff, oil spills, and fishing gear entanglement. Last year, Supreme Court declined to review a decision that would boost the species' chances to explain their population. If you love forests, trees, oceans, rivers, or you have a favorite animal to protect, you can hashtag protect what you love. You can choose to save a forest or animal and enter our contest to bring awareness of these animals or a specific place in nature. As Janice said, you can make a difference with your creations, such as painting, drawings, music, stories, writing clips, or any other artistic form that you are passionate about. You can do art, create music, write a video clip about protecting your favorite animal or place and how to protect it. If you'd like to learn more about public lands, there is a link on our website to a free movie accessible to all with our friends at North County Climate Change Alliance. They are hosting a discussion about the movie on Saturday morning from 10 a.m. to 12 to debate the movie. The registration link will be posted on our website as well. Another way to protect what you love is to sign a petition or two. If you didn't have a chance to sign the petition last week to protect public land, please sign our petition at action.foe.org. To protect all national forests, we must speak out so that people in power will make a change. The Trump administration is trying to allow oil and gas drilling on millions of acres of our public lands and national forests. This proposed new rule would allow drilling on our lands, harm our air, water, and wildlife, all without the public having a chance to participate or speak out. The Trump administration is trying to take away the power of NEPA, or the National Environmental Policy Act, which is our foundational environmental law. We must protect public land in order for our future to remain constant.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Catherine. I'm Jonah from Team 4, Water's Life. I'm working to protect safe drinking water in our streams, lakes, and rivers, and our oceans. And I'm also working to protect our oceans and our marine wildlife from the dangers of offshore drilling. So the Trump administration has consistently chosen to prioritize the expansion of fossil fuels over environmental safety, ecological beauty, and the health of wildlife populations. And this isn't any secret, as his intention to prioritize fossil fuels is made clear in who he's chosen for prominent cabinet positions, because his cabinet is full of former fossil fuel executives and lobbyists, like the head of his Department of the Interior, David Bernhardt, who has played huge roles in a couple of the rollbacks that I'm going to talk about today. We can't rely on former oil lobbyists and executives to make decisions on fossil fuel production that reflect the public wishes and our goals for environmental safety and regulation. So recently, as Catherine mentioned, the Department of the Interior, led by that fuel lobbyist, has attempted to expand fossil fuel drilling into the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, which brings me, that's rollback number 29, is that it lifts a ban on drilling in this refuge, which is such a key habitat for species like polar bears, grizzly bears, black bears, dozens of species of migratory birds, reindeer, wolverine, and moose. And opening up this area to drilling poses huge risks to these species, many of which are already endangered because of habitat loss. Oil companies have long been trying to drill in northern Alaska and this refuge, which is a place with just tremendous biological value and home to so many important species. And this rollback shows that the Trump administration has chosen to side with oil companies rather than animals, despite the fact that oil companies have consistently shown that their practices are not safe enough to really trust them. For example, in 2013, an oil rig ran aground off the coast of Alaska, which further raised concerns about the safety of oil companies' practices in this area and the safety of offshore drilling in northern Alaska. And as a result of this incident, increased safety regulations were imposed on oil companies. But recently, the Trump administration has chosen to roll back those safety regulations. And that's rollback number 42, which proposed revising these regulations on offshore oil and gas exploration by these floating oil rigs in the Arctic Ocean. And just as the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge is rich in wildlife, the oceans around Alaska are teeming with marine biodiversity from whales, walruses, narwhals, polar bears, seals, fish, and even tiny organisms like plankton that are so important to the health of our oceans. And this rollback just poses such a risk to these creatures. And this brings me to the final rollback that I want to talk about in the range of drilling in the Arctic, which is rollback 36, which permits the use of something called seismic air guns, which are used to identify where oil is underground. But however, these guns have been shown to kill fish, whales, and tons of other marine life. They're super harmful for marine biodiversity, and we demand that that these things aren't used. It's super important, and that the government holds oil companies accountable for the devastating environmental effects that they have, rather than pander to their wishes, as this administration has chosen to do, and which is super disappointing to watch us time and time again. The Trump administration, when given the opportunity to side with environmental safety, wildlife, and preventing like catastrophes with fossil fuels, has chosen to side with those companies and their dangerous practices. Now I'd like to introduce Leanna, who's going to talk about a little more about those 100 rollbacks.
Thank you, Jonah. Hi, everyone, again. My name's Leanna. I am the lead for Team 1 for the Youth Board. We work on climate action plans, renewable energy, and sustainability. And I'm also involved with the Social and Environmental Justice Committee. Our website has examples of climate action plans and resolutions for cities and school districts, so make sure to go check that out at our website at cleanforkids.org. People can submit climate action contests, ideas, and actions, as well as enter any of our other contests that you might be interested in. Use your voice, it's powerful. So as Jonah was kind of mentioning, these rollbacks are not only dangerous to wildlife and marine life, but they're also dangerous to just overall climate, and that's just on the broader sense. The 100 rollbacks, as I was kind of mentioning earlier with Dr. Mustafa Ali, are really detrimental, as they not only harm like air pollution or cause more air pollution, they're also harming the safety of our animals and public health overall. And all of it's really interconnected when you think about it. So one rollback might specifically be about marine life, but that could also impact so many other things. So it's really important when we look at these rollbacks, we see how much damage they're doing to our environment and why they must stop. So it's also important to, think about how we kind of go on with our government from here on out as well. I also just want to say another thank you to Harvard and Columbia for their trackers. They're amazing. We use them all the time, and they're a wonderful resource to educate yourselves about these rollbacks, learn where they are in the House or in the Senate and so forth, and see if you can do public comments as well. They also have an option where you can enter your email and you can get weekly updates. So that's just a little bit about the rollbacks and how they kind of connect to everything that Jonah's talking about and what I've talked about in the past. And I'll talk a little bit more later on how they connect to greenhouse gases and a little bit more about divestment. But for now, I'll head it back to Jonah for when he talks about offshore drilling.
Yeah, so another group of rollbacks that kind of all to go together have to do with offshore drilling, which is when companies build these big oil rigs out in the middle of the ocean to get at oil reserves down on the ocean floor. So, but this can have devastating effects on ecosystems because oil companies have shown that they're not willing to take the necessary precautions to prevent oil spills. And the most famous oil spill happened in 2010, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. And since then, not very much has been done to prevent something like that happening in the future. That happened 10 years ago, and yet the effects on ocean ecosystems in the Gulf of Mexico are still really heavily felt. It dumped 5 million barrels of oil into the Gulf, and it actually killed 11 people as well. It caused massive die-offs of marine life from fish, oysters, dolphins, turtles, birds, and fishermen have only recently begun to report that their yearly catches are returning to where they were before the spill. Among dolphins, the oil spill has caused a lot of like miscarriages and stillborn babies to be born. It had major negative impact on mangrove populations, which is a type of tree that is crucial to coastal environments along the Gulf of Mexico. And sadly, despite massive undertakings to try and clean up all this oil, I think the government employed something like 50,000 people much of it just remains loosely floating in the Gulf of Mexico, where it will eventually settle down to the bottom of the ocean floor, where it will continue to harm marine life for years and years and years. And it's unacceptable to rely on cleaning up oil spills after they happen instead of making our best effort to prevent them from happening in the first place. But unfortunately, President Trump is making a huge effort to expand offshore drilling and other forms of fossil fuel production at all costs. And he's chosen to ignore these environmental risks of oil spills in doing so. Rollback number 40 seeks to open up most of the United States coastal waters to offshore drilling. And luckily, these efforts have been largely blocked in federal courts, but the mere suggestion of opening up most of our coastal waters is deeply disturbing and further reveals the lack of regard for environmental safety in our oceans by the current administration. And even more disturbing is that not only has he tried to loosen where oil companies can drill, but he's actually tried to loosen safety regulations designed after Deepwater Horizon to prevent further spills like it. Rollback number 37 rolls back many of those safety regulation policies that were implemented after the Deepwater Horizon spill happened in the Gulf of Mexico in 2010. Specifically, oil companies would have to do a lot less testing of these things called blowout prevention mechanisms that were made specifically so that they would be the last line of defense against oil spills. And now they're not going to have to test nearly as much of those, see if they actually work. So there's a much higher risk of something like that happening again in the future, another oil spill catastrophe. So the expansion of offshore drilling is certainly not worth the cost that oil spills bring. And now I'd like to introduce Janice.
Yes, thank you, Jonah. So many of these rollbacks involve the drilling of fossil fuels. Let's keep it in the ground for clean air and water and a livable future. Many of these rollbacks involve fossil fuels. When we burn fossil fuels, like gas and coal, we pollute the air and water. Have you seen the black soot that comes out of the tailpipe of your car? That dirty black soot is toxic and very harmful to breathe. There are ways to have less dirty black soot coming from your car, but unfortunately, the Trump administration has cut these protections. Because these cuts by the Trump administration, we will have more dirtier air and water, more health problems and asthma for people. Thankfully, states are fighting back for clean air and water. 23 states and New York are suing the Trump administration to bring back this rule. Now, Leanna, I know you talked about some rollbacks and divestments. Can you just go over it a little bit more?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Janice. So yeah, what you're saying about like these black soot coming out of the tailpipe of your car, that kind of connects back to what we were saying in the beginning with Dr. Mustafa Ali about that rollback number 1 and with the tailpipe emissions and everything. So that rollback that was supposed to kind of reduce that from happening and sort of lessen our chances of having so much toxic air to breathe. But now that that's rolled back, that's another issue. And not only is that soot toxic, but just all the emissions coming out of that pipe is really bad, not only for our air, but also for our planet, because it contributes to the greenhouse gas effect, which in turn affects climate change. And because of climate change, we have an increase of severe weather. This is increased droughts, floods, record-breaking temperatures every single year, violent storms, hurricanes, and so much more. And the worst part about this is that these don't affect everyone on a proportional level. They disproportionately affect frontline communities, people of color, and low-income communities as well. So these frontline communities are predominantly Black, Indigenous, people of color, and low-income white people as well. They're also exposed to pollution sites so these are sites like near factories and areas of pollution. And so like Dr. Mustafa Ali was saying earlier, they're more likely to get asthma and chronic illnesses that in turn affect their health overall. And most of these people don't have the funds to get adequate health care. And so it becomes a really, really big issue because in the broader sense, climate change is a racial, social, and environmental justice issue, so it needs to be addressed as such. So one of the biggest ways to really make a difference is to advocate for divestment. Another thing we talked about earlier, where we're taking money out of fuels and, like Dr. Mustafa Ali said, investing it in other sources, maybe such as renewable energy, a cleaner source of energy that doesn't disproportionately impact communities such as fossil fuel does. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is, Team One advocates a lot for climate action plans and things like the Green New Deal and so much more, especially on school levels. So like within school districts on the university level. So I wanted to share with you guys an example of how you can try and advocate for, say, your university system or your school system to demand this like revolution of their energy systems they use, because a lot of systems use natural gas, and natural gas is a greenhouse gas that contributes to climate change. So I'm going to share this with you guys in the chat in a little bit. But the thing I'm using is an example from students from the Green New Deal UC San Diego. They're basically demanding the revolution of the University of California's current energy system, which still utilizes natural gas and things like carbon offsets, which is a topic we mentioned in a previous panel discussion. And carbon offsets are really inefficient, and it's much better to advocate for renewable energy than carbon offsets. So I will send this in the chat in a second. But carrying on with the kind of divestment theme, I just wanted to let you guys know about AB 310. So AB 310 is a new bill in the California legislature that would solve the problem of where to obtain these fossil fuel free banking systems for cities, universities, and like things like people, just average day people, individuals who want to divest from these big banks but still meet their banking needs, because a lot of banks actually put money into fossil fuel, and so there's a lot of interconnections between that as well. So currently we may push cities and others to divest their investment funds from fossil fuel companies, but we aren't able to push them to divest from these banks. So, and these banks contribute a lot to fossil fuel companies. They're really in support of them. And so they're lacking a viable banking alternative. So if we want divestment to be viable and to be possible, we need to offer them this alternative so that they can also use a different bank that's not contributing to the fossil fuel industry. For example, the California Banking Alliance said how the state public bank would provide a long-term source of stable financing for local governments and small businesses. So they would redirect their existing investment funds into the state economy and lay the foundation for resilient and equitable growth. The state public bank would also accept deposits and handle accounts for California local agencies and governments, functioning similarly to a credit union for local agencies. This would offer local government savings on fees and interest they are currently paying to Wall Street banks. So this is a potential alternative that they're trying to use in order to solve this problem of fossil fuel free banking. So I thought that was something really important. You can always contact your representatives and tell them that you want them to support AB 310. We can work on something in like a email template for that in the next coming weeks. And like I said, divestment is really important because we must decarbonize or reduce our carbon emissions and the amount of carbon we produce. We must protect our most vulnerable communities from the effects of climate change and our planet as a whole. So I just wanted to say that, and I will give it back to you, Janice. And I will send the thing in the chat.
Thank you, Leanna. There is another rollback about burning coal. Coal has mercury, a neurotoxin that hurts your brain. We must divest or stop putting money into coal plants that make our air and water dirty and unsafe. We must restrain the workers and give them good jobs in renewable energy like solar energy, wind power, water or hydroelectric power, and others. Suzanne, you were a teacher for many years. When you found out that your retirement pension was putting money into coal and fossil fuels, how did you feel, and what actions are you taking?
Thank you so much for asking. I was so surprised. That's a great question. So as a classroom teacher forever, a trainer, and someone who cares about the health of children and people everywhere, when I found out that CalSTRS was invested in fossil fuels and in coal, I was it hurt my heart. So something that I did yesterday was I called in and I left a message. Well, I didn't leave a message. I'm sorry. I spoke at the public comment. When there was a beep, I responded and told them that it was their obligation to divest and divest immediately, because being invested in fossil fuels is absolutely immoral and irresponsible and does not align with the mission of CalSTRS, our pension, California teachers, or support teachers and educators who have dedicated their lives going into work so early, staying so late, and giving 1,000% every day to our students. You know, nights, weekends, and it's great. You know, I'll give the time, but don't tell me that you are taking the money that I'm working for and taking part of that and putting it into fossil fuels or coal, which is just the most harmful of all, in my opinion. Anyway, so yes, sorry, I'm feeling a little emotional about it because this is something that is so important that we absolutely must take a stand. So I'm really excited to hear Jonah goes to Georgetown, and another one of our interns, John Williams, working on divesting from fossil fuels and the University of California system and others. So we really need to make sure that our universities, our retirement pensions, and all of us take a stand. So here's some information on the screen on how to do that. So thank you guys all so much. You're so amazing. Jillian, you haven't had a chance to talk and speak yet, and you have so many amazing ideas. And I want to hear from you. I know you're going to share some of your information next week that you have gathered on plastics and on methane and all kinds of things. You've worked so hard, and I'm so excited for everyone to see your great videos and all that you're doing along with all the youth board and interns. And thank you. Quick shout out to our board member, Jay Klopfenstein, John Bottor, our fantastic consultants, and all of you, and our very special guest, Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali, for being here. So we're so excited about that. You guys are just amazing and give me so much hope because you work so hard and you care so much. Your hearts are so pure and so beautiful. And every day when I wake up, I feel like a better person and have a better life because I know you, because you're just beautiful people. So thank you. So Jillian, I'd like you to let us know what motivates you to do the work you do, and then I'd like you to have an opportunity to ask Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali a question.
Thank you for such a warm conclusion. That was so nice. I would say what motivates me is just that I see the impacts of fossil fuels and climate change and pollution in my own life, coming from not only a family of farmers, but a family of people with disabilities. So it's very inspiring to be around it every day to make me want to change it. And Dr. Mustafa, thank you so much for being here. It is such an honor to be able to talk to you. I guess my one question is, how would you recommend that normal everyday people make an impact both socially and environmentally? What is the best way to get involved?
I think the first thing is to figure out what your passion is and how your passion then connects to the issues. There's absolutely nothing that folks do that is not connected to these issues. I would say also, find an organization. So you guys are blessed to be a part of the Clean Earth for Kids organization. For others, there may be other local organizations that they also want to be a part of. And also, you have power of the purse. Really have an understanding about where your money is going, and how you're utilizing it. And then make the choices that are best for protecting yourselves, your family, and your communities.
Thank you so much. really look forward to putting that to use.
Thanks, guys. You're so amazing. So before we sign off, I'd like each of you to have an opportunity to say something to Dr. Ali and also the people who will be watching this later on YouTube. So if you could do that. And hi, Catherine. I must say tonight, I know you're really tired, but this is, I mean, your heart is so beautiful. So you're here with us. I mean, this girl is out like working on trails.
Thank you, Suzanne.
We all, you know, we know that you're exhausted tonight, and you're so tired. There she is trying to eat something right now because she's been out doing the work, you know. But yeah, we all were a little bit, you know, we're thinking she's pretty tired tonight. But here you are. No, you're a trooper, and thank you so much for your dedication and for being here. So I'll start with, well, you're still chewing, so should I? Okay, I'll start with Jonah. So, and then you can pass it to someone else. So if you could say a few words to Dr. Ali and also anything else that you want to say, and then you can pass it to someone else. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. We're so grateful for your perspective. I learned a lot from you today about, you know, my focus here is on water, so, you know, I don't get to learn much about emissions and things like that. So that was such a valuable thing for me. So thanks so much. And next week, a little announcement. Next week we're gonna have one of my former teachers on the panel discussion. We're gonna be talking about bees. So that's just a little shout out. And thanks so much everyone for being on.
Do you want to pass it to someone else?
Oh, yes. Leanna, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. I just want to say thank you so much, Dr. Mustafa. Like, you are really an inspiration to me. I mean, I literally use like everything you've written like so many times, like your definitions on like environmental injustice and so much more. Like I use those almost on like a daily basis. And so it's like really, it's full circle to like be able to have these discussions with you and have you on our panel discussion. It's honestly just a treat for me. And I don't know, it really inspires me to see all the work you've done over these years and how compassionate you are. And it really gives me the fuel to kind of take that in my own life and try to, you know, do the same thing. So thank you so much. And I guess just to everyone out there, you know, I think it's really important to utilize your voice and your vote, especially coming up. So, you know, if you can register, please. I mean, you have the opportunity to vote, and most people and some people in this country don't. You know, it's honestly a privilege to be able to do so. So use your voice and use your vote if you can, and you know, just advocate for what you believe in and what you love, and just kind of spread that positivity. And I think it will really help. You know, there's a lot of climate anxiety and a lot of people are worried. You know, we have a pandemic and we have so many issues going on in our country and in the world. And I think being able to offer solutions and, you know, positive things about what we can do about all this stuff speaks wonders and speaks volumes. So just want to leave everyone with that message. And thank you guys all for attending. And thank you again, Dr. Mustafa. It's truly an honor. And I will pass it on to Jimmy.
Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. And like Leanna said earlier, we learned something new from you each time you're on. And I hope to see more of you in our panel discussions so that you can just keep teaching people, and you're already setting an active example for future advocates and regular citizens in general, and just teaching everyone how to be a better citizen to keep our earth healthy and be able to live in a better place. Jillian, would you like to speak?
Sure. I'll just add a little bit to what I've already said. Thank you so much, Dr. Mustafa. Again, you are such an inspiration to all of us here in setting an example for us wanting to be better human beings every day. And I look forward to presenting next week. I got some amazing information about plastics and methane coming up, so stay tuned for that. Catherine, I think you're last.
Thank you, Jillian. Thank you so much for joining us. And I know you're super busy and stuff, so thank you for spending the time to educate us. And I look forward to seeing more of you. And thank you especially for incorporating environmentalism and art through your music. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And what would you like to say, Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali, before we sign off? And you can sign us off and tell us thanks again.
I would say thank you to each and every one of you. You have no idea how much you inspire me, how much I learn from you each time that I join you. And just remember that you have power unless you give it away. So utilize your power to make real positive change happen. We can win on climate change. We can win on stopping the environmental injustices that happen. We can make the real change that our parents and our grandparents and maybe our great-grandparents dreamed about. So let's just get focused and let's make it happen. And I look forward to being as supportive as I possibly can with everything that you do.
Thank you so much. So as we usually do, I'll stay on if there are any questions that anyone has. I know our youth board and interns, it's been a long day for them as they've been preparing and going over research or building trails and all the great things that they do. So thank you guys so much for being on with us. And thank you again, Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali. It's such a privilege